At our condo board meeting, my fiancé announced I had resigned. Graham says it in the calm, regretful voice he uses when a client's loan falls through. He's standing behind my empty chair with one hand on its back. His mother sits beside him in a cream raincoat, dry and composed, although I've just run 3 blocks through a storm because someone changed the meeting time. Vivian opens a leather folder and hands Ruth Bell a proxy form bearing my signature. The vote starts while I'm still in the doorway. "Wait," I say. 6 faces turn toward me. Graham's doesn't. I walk to Ruth and place an older proxy beside the new one. Same signature, same faint diagonal crease passing through the L in Lena. Different dates. I let Ruth compare them. Then I look at the man I'm supposed to marry in 11 weeks. Who signed the proxy? Graham finally raises his eyes, and in that second, before he answers, I understand that he isn't surprised to see me. He's disappointed. 23 days earlier, the most serious disagreement in our kitchen is whether cilantro tastes like soap. "It does," Graham says, picking green leaves out of the rice I made. "It does not. It tastes like a candle had a nervous breakdown." "What kind of candles are you eating?" "The expensive ones your future mother-in-law gives us." He grins when he says it, and I laugh because the evening is warm, the windows are open, and our wedding invitations are stacked on the counter, waiting for stamps. Graham has loosened his tie and rolled his sleeves to his elbows. He looks comfortable in my kitchen, more than comfortable, established. When he carries our plates to the sink, his hip bumps the junk drawer. It doesn't close properly because he keeps dropping batteries into it without taking them out of the package. "You're doing that thing," I say. "What thing?" "Making a problem for future Graham. Future Graham is married. He'll have help." I toss a dish towel at his back. He catches it without turning around. "See? There are moments when loving Graham feels effortless. He remembers how I take my coffee. He warms my side of the bed with his feet in winter, which is either romantic or hostile depending on how cold his feet are. When my kitchen faucet started leaking, he watched 3 videos, bought the wrong washer twice, and stayed up until midnight fixing it because he refused to let me call a plumber. He can make persistence look like devotion. The front door unlocks. I glance at the clock over the stove. "Are we expecting someone?" Graham pauses with his hands in the sink. Vivian walks in carrying a long cardboard box and a shopping bag. "Good, you're both here," she says. She kisses Graham's cheek, then mine, leaving the faint smell of rose perfume near my face. Her gaze travels over the dishes, the invitations, and Graham's tie on the back of a chair. I brought the light fixture. "What light fixture?" I ask. "For 3B. "You bought it?" "It was the last one." She sets the box across the island directly on top of the wedding invitations. The agent said brass photographs better than chrome. 3B is a 1-bedroom condo 2 floors below us. Its owner moved to Arizona and listed it after a pipe leak destroyed half the living room ceiling. Vivian has been talking about buying it for 10 days, although talking, in Vivian's case, means describing decisions that have not technically been made yet. Graham dries his hands. "Mom, your offer hasn't been accepted." I know that. And the rental amendment hasn't passed. I know that too. She says both things with such patience that he sounds foolish for mentioning them. I lift the box off the invitations. Under it, 2 envelopes have pale dents along their edges. "Where did you get a key?" I ask. Vivian is already unpacking containers from the shopping bag. "What key?" "The key you just used." "Oh." Graham gave me his spare. I look at him. He concentrates on opening a container of lemon cookies. "It's for emergencies," he says. "What emergency happened tonight?" "I had my hands full," Vivian says. "That's exactly when a key is useful." She offers me a cookie. It is perfectly round and dusted with sugar. I don't take it. Graham puts down the container. "Lena." He only says my name, but I hear the rest of the sentence. "Don't make this awkward. Not over a key. Not when she brought cookies." "Can I talk to you for a second?" I ask. Vivian smiles and begins arranging cookies on one of my plates. I'll keep myself entertained. In the bedroom, Graham closes the door halfway. You gave her a key without asking me. A spare. She lives 15 minutes away. I live 0 minutes away. She's helping with wedding stuff. She's coming in and out. She can buzz. He rubs his forehead. I knew you'd make it a whole conversation. That lands harder than the key itself. I lower my voice, even though Vivian can probably hear every word. Then you knew I wouldn't like it. I knew you'd say no automatically. So you skipped asking. I didn't skip anything. I made a practical decision. About my front door. Our front door. The correction sits between us. Graham moved into 8C 14 months ago after we got engaged. The condo is mine. I bought it 6 years ago before I met him, after saving until every restaurant meal felt like a moral failure. He contributes to groceries and utilities and pays a fixed amount each month that we call housing, because rent sounds temporary and mortgage sounds like an argument. We have spent whole Sundays discussing how marriage will change things, beneficiaries, insurance, whether to refinance, whether his name should eventually go on the title. We have never agreed that our means his mother gets a key. I want it back, I say. Fine. Tonight. His jaw shifts. You're going to embarrass her over this? She walked into my home. Our home, Lena. Then why was I the only one who didn't know she could? For a moment, he looks genuinely hurt. That is one of Graham's gifts. He can find the part of your objection that injures him and hold it up like evidence. I'm trying to make our lives easier, he says. I'm trying to make her feel included. She's included in our wedding. She's not included in our lock. He laughs once, without humor. You know what? I'll get it. When we return to the kitchen, Vivian has stamped 7 invitations and put the stamps upside down. Tiny rebellion, she says when I point it out. Graham asks for the key. She looks from him to me, and her face softens with understanding. Of course. There is no protest, no wounded speech. She reaches into her purse and places the key in the blue ceramic dish beside the door. The dish has a chip on one side from the first night I owned the condo, when I dropped a bottle of sparkling wine against it. I bought it at a street market that afternoon because I wanted one beautiful, unnecessary thing in the empty apartment. Ever since, the sound of my key landing in it has meant the day is over, and I'm where I belong. Vivian's key hits the ceramic with a clean little note. There, she says, crisis resolved. I hate that she makes me feel petty while doing exactly what I asked. After she leaves, Graham stacks the invitations without looking at me. Thank you, I say. He presses the edges into alignment. Sure. The next morning, he kisses my temple while I'm making coffee. Mom found something interesting in the condo documents, he says. I stir sugar into my mug. Good morning to you, too. She thinks the owner-occupancy rule can be amended with a simple majority. It can. He waits. I sip my coffee. And? He says. And what? You made it sound like it would be hard. It should be hard. Changing the rental rules affects insurance, security, staffing, and property values. She's not opening a nightclub, Lena. She wants a furnished corporate rental. She wants an investment unit in a building where investment units are restricted. The amendment fixes that. The amendment creates 12 other problems. He leans against the counter. You're treasurer. People trust you. The invitation inside the statement is obvious enough that I set down my spoon. You want me to support it. I want you to look at it fairly. I have. You looked at a general amendment before Mom was involved. Does her involvement change the insurance quote? You know what I mean. I do. He means I should stop behaving like a board officer and start behaving like family. At noon, Vivian emails me a spreadsheet titled 3B Projections. The first tab contains expected monthly income. The second lists expenses. The building's move-in fees are missing. So is the commercial insurance writer. She has budgeted $200 a year for maintenance. I send it back with 5 corrections and a note that says, these numbers need to be conservative if you're using them for financing. She replies within 6 minutes. This is why we need you. I stare at the sentence, longer than it deserves. That evening is the monthly board workshop. We meet in the first floor common room where the air conditioning is always either absent or vindictive. Ruth Bell sits at the head of the folding tables with a pencil tucked through her silver bun. She has lived in the building since its third elevator still worked, a phrase she uses to establish seniority in arguments about everything. Beside her is Cal Mercer, who is not related to Graham despite the last name and reminds everyone of that whenever Graham attends. Cal owns 2 units but lives in neither. He supports expanding rentals with the enthusiasm of a man who will not be present for the consequences. People want flexibility, Cal says. We need to modernize. People also want the lobby ceiling to stop leaking, I say. Our new insurance estimate assumes the current owner occupancy ratio. If that ratio changes, the estimate changes. Cal waves a hand. By how much? I've requested updated numbers, so we don't know. We know it won't be less. Graham is sitting against the wall as Vivian's financial advisor. He gives me a small smile meant to look encouraging. Vivian wears navy and takes notes on a yellow legal pad. Ruth taps her pencil. No vote tonight. We circulate the proposed language, obtain the insurance estimate, and put it on next month's agenda. Could we schedule a special meeting? Vivian asks. Ruth looks over her glasses. Are you an owner, Ms. Mercer? Not yet. Then no. Vivian smiles. That's fair. On the elevator ride upstairs, Graham says nothing. The moment our door closes, he drops his keys into the blue dish, hard enough to make me flinch. You made her look ridiculous. I answered Cal's question. You knew Mom was trying to establish credibility. I didn't know that was my job. She has money at risk. Her offer hasn't been accepted. It will be. I take off my shoes and line them against the wall. Then she should know the real expenses before it is. You always do that. Do what? Turn concern into control. He says it quietly, almost kindly. I look up. Excuse me? You convince yourself you're protecting people, and then everything has to happen your way. A laugh comes out of me because the alternative is letting him see how precisely he found the soft place. I corrected a spreadsheet. You challenged her in front of the board. I challenged the numbers. You think there's a difference because numbers can't get embarrassed. The elevator groans beyond the door. Somewhere upstairs, a vacuum starts. I pick up his keys from the dish and hold them out. Did your mother give you back the only copy? His face closes. That's what we're doing now? It's a question. Yes. She gave it back. I place the keys in his palm. Okay. He watches me for another second, then walks toward the bedroom. 2 days later, I come home early because a client cancels a meeting. The condo is empty, but the air smells faintly of Vivian's rose perfume. On the counter, my board binder is open. The pocket holding the old plumbing proxy is empty. For a few seconds, I stood with my hand inside the empty pocket, as if the paper might reappear under my fingers. The binder had been on the desk in the second bedroom, which Graham and I generously called the office, despite the laundry rack occupying most of it. Now it lay open on the kitchen counter beside our printer. The proposed rental amendment was clipped to the front. My notes from the workshop had been removed and stacked with unusual care. I checked the printer tray. Empty. Graham? The condo answered with the refrigerator's low hum. I called him. Hey, he said. Voices and silverware clattered behind him. Everything okay? Did you take something out of my board binder? A pause, then a chair scraped. What thing? The plumbing proxy. Oh, maybe. Maybe. Mom wanted to see what the form looked like. So you gave it to her? I scanned it. Why? So she could prepare one for the special meeting. There isn't a special meeting. Not yet. I turned toward the printer. One corner of the glass had a smear across it. Where's the original? It should be in the binder. It isn't. Then it's probably on my desk. I went back to the office and looked at his desk. It's not. Lena, I'm having lunch with a client. You took a signed document out of my files. It's an expired proxy for a plumbing vote. It's not a passport. The voices behind him faded as he moved away from the table. "I'll find it when I get home," he said. "Okay." I looked at the open binder. "Who was in the condo today?" "No one." "It smells like your mother's perfume." Another pause. "She may have stopped by for the scan." "With what key? Can we please not start this again?" "You said she returned it." "She did." "Then how did she get in?" "I let her in before I left." "You left her here alone?" "She was printing one page." I closed my eyes. He lowered his voice. "My client is waiting." "Fine. I love you." The words came quickly, meant to tie the conversation shut. "Find the proxy," I said, and hung up. Graham came home carrying takeout from the Thai place on 9th and a paper bag from the bakery where we had ordered our wedding cake. The combination was so calculated, I almost respected it. "I brought noodles," he said, "and samples." "You already had lunch." "I'm capable of eating twice." He put everything on the island and took off his jacket. His tie was green, the one I liked because it made his eyes look lighter. He had probably worn it for his client, but that didn't stop me from feeling manipulated by a color. "Did you find the proxy?" I asked. He searched his briefcase, then went into the office. I heard drawers open. The laundry rack squeaked as he shoved it aside. "Not here," he called. "Where else would it be?" He came out, holding the proposed amendment. "Mom might have taken it accidentally with these pages." "You said you scanned it." "I did." "Why would she have the original?" "Maybe she picked it up." So she was looking through the binder. She wasn't snooping. I didn't say snooping. "You were about to." He tossed the amendment onto the counter. "I'll call her." He called from the living room. I stayed in the kitchen, separating containers we weren't going to eat from cake samples I didn't want. "No," I heard him say. "The signed one." A longer silence followed. "Check the folder in your car." He glanced at me. "Okay, call me when you find it." He ended the call and placed his phone face down. "She doesn't know where it is." That's comforting. It'll turn up. And until it does, what do you think she's going to do with it? I don't know. That's why people generally don't take signed documents. He leaned both hands on the island. "You're talking about my mother like she broke into a bank. She entered my condo after I told her she couldn't have a key, opened my board records, and removed a paper with my signature. I let her in." That doesn't improve the sentence. His mouth tightened. Then he looked down at the bakery bag. "They gave us the almond one again," he said. "I know you liked it." The change in subject was so naked it made me tired. "We can taste cake after you ask her to bring back everything she took." "She didn't take everything. You know what I mean." He nodded, but with the stiff compliance of a person agreeing to an inspection. We ate noodles at the island. The cake samples stayed in their plastic cups until the frosting sweated against the lids. Just before bed, Vivian texted me. "I'm sorry I misplaced your old form. I thought it was among the blank samples Graham printed for me. I'll keep looking." Then, a minute later, "I would never use your name without permission." I read both messages twice. Graham was brushing his teeth. I held the phone where he could see it when he came out. "She apologized," he said around the toothbrush. "She apologized for misplacing it." That's what happened. She also denied something I never accused her of. He spat into the sink and rinsed his mouth. "Because she knows how you think." "How do I think?" Suspiciously. He said it with a small smile, trying to make it teasing. When I didn't smile back, he wrapped his arms around my waist. "She's excited," he said. "This unit makes sense for her. She wants to be closer to us. She already lives 15 minutes away. She wants something productive. Since Dad died, she's been looking for a project." Vivian's husband had been gone 4 years. She spoke of him tenderly, but according to Graham, they had spent their last decade disagreeing over money and thermostat settings. Grief had simplified their marriage into a love story. "I understand that," I said, "but she doesn't get to make me part of the project." "I know." He rested his chin on my shoulder. The embrace felt good. That was the problem with Graham. Even when I wanted distance, he knew exactly how to fit himself around me. "I'll get the paper back," he said. The following Saturday, we met Vivian at the caterer's tasting room. She arrived with a binder of her own and greeted me as if nothing had happened. The caterer brought tiny portions of chicken, salmon, and mushroom risotto on white square plates. Graham took each bite seriously, closing his eyes as if a marriage could be protected by choosing the correct sauce. "The chicken's safer," Vivian said. "For whom?" I asked. She smiled. "People with less adventurous stomachs." Graham pointed his fork at me. "That's you. I eat food from carts. You inspect the carts first. That's why I'm alive." He laughed, and Vivian did too. For 20 minutes, we were easy together. Then the caterer handed me an updated estimate. "There are 14 additional guests," I said. Vivian dabbed the corner of her mouth with a napkin. "A few people were overlooked." "By whom?" "Friends of the family. 2 former business partners of Graham's father. The Palmers." "I don't know the Palmers. They've known Graham since forever." Graham became fascinated by the salmon. I slid the estimate toward him. "Did you approve this?" I said we could look at it. 14 people isn't looking. Vivian leaned closer. "I'll cover the difference. It's not just the money." "Then what is it?" The question was sincere. That was more unnerving than hostility. "It's our guest list," I said. "Of course, I'm only helping." "With a decision we already made." She sat back. "You're right. Remove them." The caterer pretended to study the label on a water bottle. Graham waited until Vivian went to the restroom. "Was that necessary?" he asked. "What did I do?" "You could have discussed it privately." "She brought it up here. She offered to pay. I don't want her buying 14 votes in our wedding." He put down his fork. "Why do you say things like that?" "Like what?" "Like every kind gesture has a strategy behind it. I thought of the missing Proxy, doesn't it?" Vivian returned carrying her purse. She placed a folded paper beside my plate. "I found this in my car," she said. "My plumbing proxy." The lower corner was bent. A pale diagonal crease crossed my signature. "I'm glad it turned up," I said. "I told you it would." Graham sounded relieved enough for all 3 of us. I unfolded the page. There was a gray shadow along the edge where it had been pressed against a scanner. Vivian noticed me looking. "I made 1 copy to study the formatting," she said. "I hope that's acceptable. It's a standard form. Ruth has blanks." "Now I know." She smiled and lifted her purse onto her shoulder. We removed the 14 guests. Vivian paid for everyone's lunch anyway. By Monday, her offer on 3B had been accepted. The contract included a financing contingency and a short closing window. Graham brought sparkling wine home and chilled it in the kitchen sink because the refrigerator was full. "We're celebrating a transaction that depends on a rule that hasn't changed," I said. "We're celebrating progress." He handed me a glass. Vivian lifted hers. "To becoming neighbors." I drank because refusing would turn 1 sip into a referendum on her entire future. She described the furniture she planned to order, the rate she could charge visiting executives, and the local cleaning company she had contacted. Graham had prepared a financing package based partly on projected rental income. "You used those projections?" I asked. "The corrected version," he said. "The corrected version still assumes the amendment passes." Vivian's smile thinned. "We understand there's risk." "Do you?" Graham set down his glass. "Lena, I'm asking because you're ordering furniture." "I can return furniture," Vivian said. "The light fixture, too." That was final sale. She laughed. Graham joined her after a second. I managed something that may have looked like a smile. The next morning, the updated insurance estimate arrived. If unrestricted furnished rentals pushed owner occupancy below the carrier's threshold, the building's annual premium could rise by almost 18%. There were also new deductibles for water damage and guest-related claims. I forwarded the estimate to the full board. Cal replied to everyone, "This is fear-mongering based on hypothetical occupancy." Ruth answered before I could, "It is an estimate from our insurer, which is precisely what we requested." I read her sentence 3 times with a satisfaction I didn't entirely admire. At lunch, Graham called. "You embarrass Mom again." I sent the board a document. "You knew what it would do." "Inform them?" "Cal says there are other carriers. Cal can bring us quotes. You're enjoying this." I stood from my desk and closed my office door. Enjoying what? Being right. Would it be better if the estimate were fake? You could have talked to me before sending it. You're not on the board. I'm your fiancé. The words came out sharper than he intended. He immediately softened his voice. "I'm asking for basic consideration. And I'm asking why being engaged to you means I'm supposed to give your mother information before the other owners get it. She has a contract now. That was her decision, with our understanding that the board was open to the amendment. I never gave you that understanding." He went quiet. The silence had weight, not confusion, calculation. "What did you tell her?" I asked. "I told her the board would consider it." "What did you tell the lender?" "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Interrogate me while I'm trying to solve something." "I'm not the thing you have to solve." "I didn't say you were." He sighed. "I have another call." That evening, someone had removed my printed insurance estimate from the kitchen counter. I found it beneath Graham's briefcase with handwritten notes in the margin. The handwriting was Vivian's. I photographed the pages before putting them back. 2 days later, Audrey Lane from 6A stopped me by the mailboxes. Audrey worked in costume production and wore combinations of color that made every elevator ride feel underdressed. "Your mother-in-law is efficient," she said. "She's not technically my mother-in-law yet. I'm withholding the title until the cake is served." "That seems fair." Audrey tucked a roll of fabric under one arm. "She showed 3B to a man from Connecticut yesterday. I stopped sorting my mail. Showed it how? Like a rental. Talked about monthly rates and linen service. He asked whether the gym was open 24 hours. The amendment hasn't passed. I told him that. Vivian said the paperwork was a formality. A delivery driver entered behind us, letting the outer door swing shut. How did she get into the building? I asked. Audrey tilted her head. Used a fob. The brass front door key would open our condo, but the building entrance and amenities required an electronic fob assigned through management. Graham's was a black rectangle with a scratched corner. Mine had a white dot of nail polish so I could tell them apart. That night, I checked the blue dish. My keys were there. Graham's were not. He came home an hour later without them. I left them at the office, he said when I asked. The keys or the fob? Both. Your mother showed 3B yesterday. He loosened his tie. She took measurements. She showed it to a prospective renter. It was someone she knows. She used a fob. His hand stopped at his collar. You gave her yours, I said. She needed access. After I asked for the key back. That was the condo key. I stared at him. You found a technical distinction? It's a building fob, Lena. It doesn't open our door. It opens the building I live in. She's about to own here. She doesn't own here now. He yanked the tie free. You're making me report every small favor I do for my mother. I'm asking you not to give her access to my home behind my back. Our home. Stop using that word as a weapon. He flinched, and for one hopeful second, I thought he understood. Then he said, maybe stop using mine like a border. The next morning, I asked Paul Alvarez, the building manager, to check the access history on Graham's fob. He frowned at his monitor. Security issue? I'm trying to determine who's been using it. If it's assigned to your unit, I can give you the dates. I can't tell you who physically held it. That's fine. He printed 2 pages. Graham's fob had opened the building 11 times in the previous month when he was either at work or beside me somewhere else. It had accessed the basement storage area 3 times and the 3rd floor service corridor twice. I carried the printout upstairs. The lock turned before I reached my door. Vivian stepped out of my condo holding a tape measure, my basement storage key, and the leather folder she would eventually carry into the board meeting. For one absurd second, the tape measure bothered me most. It was mine. Yellow casing, black rubber grip, a streak of white paint from when I measured the kitchen cabinets. I kept it in the junk drawer under Graham's unopened batteries. Vivian stopped with the door half closed behind her. "You're home early," she said. "So are you." She followed my gaze to the keys in her hand. "Graham said I could check the storage locker. I wanted to see whether the light fixture would fit down there until closing." "You went through my drawers?" "He got the key for me." "When?" "This morning. He told me his keys were at work. I can't account for what Graham tells you." She said it gently, as if refusing to participate in gossip. I held out my hand. "Give me the keys." Her fingers tightened around them. "We're going to be family, Lena." That isn't an answer. Neither is treating every ordinary favor like an invasion. "The keys." She dropped them into my palm. The basement key bit into my skin beneath the tape measure. "I had hoped we'd get past this territorial phase before the wedding," she said. I looked at the leather folder under her arm. "What's in there?" "Documents for my purchase." "My documents?" Her expression changed by less than an inch. "No." I stepped aside, leaving the path to the elevator open. "Then take them home." She stood there long enough to make leaving seem like her decision. "Graham is under a great deal of pressure," she said. "I hope you remember that when he gets home." The elevator arrived. She entered without looking back. I waited until the doors closed, then went inside my condo. Nothing appeared disturbed until I opened the junk drawer. The batteries had been moved. Beneath them, the envelope containing our spare storage key was empty. In the office, my board binder was shut. The old plumbing proxy Vivian had returned was still in its pocket, but the diagonal fold had been pressed flatter. I removed it, slipped it into my work bag, and zipped the bag closed. The basement smelled like concrete and dryer sheets. Our locker was at the far end, behind a chain-link door with 8C written on a metal tag. Inside, 2 boxes of my winter clothes had been pushed against the back wall. My folding chairs were stacked on their sides. The brass light fixture occupied the center shelf. Around it were 4 sealed cartons labeled Vivian Kitchen, Vivian Linens, and Vivian Office. A rolled rug leaned against my suitcase. Someone had wedged my grandmother's narrow walnut table behind the cartons, with one leg suspended off the floor. I pulled it out first. The table wasn't valuable, but it had followed me through 3 apartments. Its top carried a pale ring from a plant I had overwatered for years. Graham knew I wrapped its legs in towels whenever we moved it. My phone rang while I was checking the wood for scratches. "You confronted her in the hallway?" he asked. "Hello, Graham." "She's sitting in her car crying." "Then she shouldn't drive yet." "What's wrong with you?" I looked at the boxes. "How long have her things been in our locker?" "They're temporary." "That isn't a length of time. Maybe a week." "Her unit hasn't closed." She had to take advantage of a sale. So she bought furniture for a condo she doesn't own, under a rental rule that hasn't passed, and put it in storage I pay for. "I pay for our home, too. You contribute $700 a month." Silence. I had never used the number as a weapon before. We both knew what similar space cost in our neighborhood. The arrangement had made sense when he moved in because he was rebuilding his business after losing a major client. Then it continued because we were saving for the wedding. Somewhere along the way, temporary became evidence that I was ungenerous if I mentioned it. "That's how you see me?" he asked. "I'm looking at 6 feet of your mother's boxes. Don't change the subject." I didn't. His breathing sharpened through the phone. I asked for 1 shelf. "You gave her the locker key. For 1 day. And your fob 11 times. He stopped breathing for a beat. "You checked my access history?" "The fob assigned to my unit. You had Paul monitor me." I asked who was entering the building. "Unbelievable." "I agree. You used your board position to investigate your fiancé." I asked management for the access record attached to my condo after an unauthorized person entered it. My mother isn't an unauthorized person. She is when I don't authorize her. You don't get to make every decision. About who enters the condo I own? Yes, Graham, I do. He hung up. I stood alone among Vivian's labeled boxes, trembling so hard the keys clicked against the tape measure in my fist. I gave her 48 hours to remove everything from the locker. I wrote it in a short text and copied Graham. Vivian replied with a thumbs up. That tiny yellow hand made me angrier than a paragraph would have. The next evening, the boxes were gone. The brass fixture disappeared with them. My table had been placed at the front of the locker, its legs wrapped in 2 clean dish towels. On top sat a paper bag of lemon cookies. I left the bag there. Graham slept in the second bedroom for 3 nights. During the day, he communicated through practical questions. Are you using the car Saturday? Did you order more coffee? The venue needs the final table count by the 18th. I answered only what required an answer. The condo became extremely polite. At the next board workshop, Ruth asked me to stay afterward. Cal left first, carrying 3 folders he had not opened. The other directors followed. Graham and Vivian hadn't attended, which should have warned me. Ruth closed the common room door. I received a complaint, she said. She handed me 2 pages with Vivian's name at the bottom. The complaint accused me of using confidential building records to intimidate a prospective owner, interfering with her purchase, and creating a hostile review process because of a private family dispute. It mentioned the access log, my insurance email, and my refusal to let her store property in common building facilities. My storage locker isn't a common facility. I assumed not. And the fob was registered to my unit. Paul shouldn't have released the log informally. He's released mine before when I lost a package. That was different. How? Ruth removed the pencil from her bun, and a strand of silver hair loosened near her ear. Because no one filed a complaint afterward. I almost laughed. Is any of this about the amendment? I asked. It's about the appearance of fairness. I got an insurance estimate the board requested. I know. She entered the building using Graham's fob. I know that too. Then what exactly am I supposed to recuse myself from? Having an opinion? Ruth set the pencil on the table. I'm asking you to step back from discussion of the leasing amendment until we review the complaint. She wants the vote before her closing date. Yes, so the complaint gives her what she wants. It gives her nothing if you stop making it easy for Cal to call this personal. My cheeks burned. Ruth's voice softened. You're a good treasurer, Lena. Be careful about making a correct argument in a way that lets people ignore it. I folded the complaint along its center. Did Graham speak to you? Her eyes moved to the pencil. What did he say? That you were under pressure from the wedding and reconsidering how much board work you could handle. I stared at her. He said he was worried, Ruth added. He didn't tell me he was worried. I gathered that. At home, Graham was cooking pasta. The blue dish held his keys again, including the scratched black fob. I'm sorry, he said before I took off my coat. The apology was so unexpected that I kept one hand on the doorknob. For what? Letting this get ugly. He stirred the sauce and lowered the burner. 2 plates were already on the island. I shouldn't have given Mom the fob, he said. I shouldn't have put her boxes downstairs without asking. You were right. The words found every place I had wanted them to land. I set my work bag beside the blue dish. Why did you talk to Ruth about me? His shoulders lowered. Because I was worried. You told her I might step back. I said maybe it would help. Help whom? All of us. I took Vivian's complaint from my bag and placed it on the island. Graham read the first page. His expression barely changed. You knew, I said. She showed me a draft. And you didn't tell me. I asked her not to file it, but she did. She felt cornered. By the insurance company? By you treating her like some stranger trying to scam the building. She used your fob, filled my storage locker, and showed a unit she doesn't own to a renter. She's trying to keep a deal alive. And what are you trying to keep alive? He looked toward the stack of wedding invitations still waiting for stamps. Us, he said. I wanted to believe him. I wanted the sauce on the stove and the 2 plates and his fob in the dish to be proof that he had returned to me. Then he said, "If you step away from the amendment, Mom will withdraw the complaint." I pulled out a chair but didn't sit. "So that's the trade." "It's not a trade." "What is it?" "A way to lower the temperature." "She files a false complaint, I give up my vote, and that's compromise? You don't have to vote against her." "Yes, I do, if the amendment is bad." "You're choosing a building policy over my family. I'm choosing the job I agreed to do." He turned off the burner. "And what did you agree to do with me?" The sauce gave one last wet pop. I thought about saying something cruel. Instead, I carried my work bag into the office and locked the plumbing proxy in my desk drawer. The next morning, I removed Graham as an authorized user from the household account I used for utilities and wedding expenses. I moved the remaining wedding money back into my savings and emailed the venue to ask which deposits were refundable. I didn't cancel anything. Not yet. At lunch, the florist told me she could return half the deposit if we canceled before Friday. The venue would keep a fixed booking fee. The photographer offered a credit. I wrote every number in a notebook. Graham found it that evening. "You're pricing the end of our wedding." "I'm figuring out what choices I have." His face went pale. "Because of my mother's boxes. Because you think my consent is a problem to solve. That is not what I think. You went to the board chair about my position. To protect you. From what? You get so rigid when you're scared." I closed the notebook. He sat opposite me. "I love that you're capable. I love that you built all this. But sometimes there's no room for anyone else to have a say." "You had a say." I said no. "That's exactly what I mean." We looked at each other across the desk. He reached for my hand. I moved it into my lap. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. "Tell your mother the amendment may fail. Tell her to make her financial decisions without counting on my labor or my vote, and stop speaking for me." His eyes filled before mine did. "Okay," he said. He slept beside me that night, but didn't touch me. In the morning, he made coffee and left his fob in the blue dish. For 4 days, Vivian did not call. Graham didn't mention the amendment. The quiet felt fragile, but real. Then, at 5:42 on Thursday evening, Audrey texted me. "Are you coming? Ruth says you resigned." I was at my office packing my bag for a meeting scheduled at 7. I called Ruth. No answer. The calendar invitation on my phone still said 7, but the board portal showed the meeting had been moved to 6. An announcement below it said the treasurer's resignation would be accepted before the leasing vote. My resignation. I opened my sent mail. At 8:13 that morning, while I had been in a client meeting, my board account had sent Ruth a short message saying I was stepping down immediately for personal reasons. The shared tablet at home stayed logged into that account. I grabbed the plumbing proxy from my locked drawer and ran into the rain. By the time the elevator reached the common room, the meeting had already begun. Through the door, I could see Graham's hand resting on the back of my empty chair. Graham's mouth opened, but Vivian answered first. Lena signed it. Ruth kept one hand on each proxy. The old page I had brought was wrinkled from months in my binder. The new one was smooth except for the gray image of that same wrinkle running diagonally across my copied signature. "When?" I asked. Vivian looked at the date on her form. "Tuesday." "Tuesday, I told Graham you needed to make your decisions without my vote." "That isn't what he told me." The directors turned toward him. Graham moved around my chair. "Can we not do this like an interrogation?" Ruth tapped the copied crease with her pencil. "This form determines who is permitted to vote for Unit 8C. An explanation is appropriate." "It's her signature," Graham said. "That wasn't my question," I said. "Who put it on this form?" Cal leaned forward. "Does it matter if she authorized it?" I didn't. "Then obviously it matters," Ruth said. The room went quiet except for rain rattling against the narrow basement windows. Graham looked at me with an expression I recognized from our worst arguments. He wasn't asking forgiveness. He was asking me to stop before I forced him to say something irreversible. Vivian's fingers tightened around her leather folder. "He prepared the paperwork," she said. Graham turned on her. "Mom, you said she had agreed to step back." "She did." I moved closer to the table. Water slid from my coat onto the carpet. "I agreed to stop you from speaking for me. You were canceling the wedding behind my back. I was finding out what it would cost. You moved the money, my money." "There," he said, turning to Ruth as if I had proved his case. "That's how she talks now. Everything is hers. Her condo, her account, her board, her decision. I was trying to keep one bad week from blowing up our lives." Ruth's voice stayed level. "Did Lena sign this proxy?" Graham rubbed both hands over his face. "No." The word was almost lost beneath the rain. Vivian stared at him. "I scanned the old signature page," he said. "Mom needed a proxy for the vote, and Lena had already decided she wasn't participating. I was forced to recuse myself from the discussion," I said. "That didn't authorize your mother to cast my owner vote. I thought that was the point of recusing." "You didn't think that. Don't tell me what I thought." Cal picked up the new proxy and angled it toward the light. "You attached a copied signature to a different form?" I used a page she had signed. "For a plumbing assessment," Ruth said. It was still her signature. I heard Vivian's reasoning in his mouth. A signature once given had become reusable. A key given to him could be lent to her. A home shared with him became accessible to both of them. Every yes spread until it covered the places where I had said no. Ruth took the page from Cal. "The proxy is invalid." "The vote has already started," Cal said, "and the owner of 8C is present." "She resigned from the board." "No," I said. "I didn't." Ruth looked at me. "The email came from your account." "From the tablet in my condo." Graham's face had gone still. I turned to him. "Did you send it?" He didn't answer. "Graham, I drafted something. You sent it. You were going to resign eventually." "I never said that. You were moving money and pricing cancellations. You locked documents in your desk like I was some stranger." "So you went into my email." The account was open. "Did I tell you to send that message?" He shoved my chair toward the table. Its legs scraped loudly against the floor. "You weren't talking to me." "That isn't an answer." "I was trying to buy us time. By resigning for me and using my signature? By getting this stupid vote over with so my mother wouldn't lose her contract and we could get back to our actual lives." Vivian looked at him then. Really looked. Until that moment, she had seemed confident that he would make their choices sound reasonable. Now his desperation had stripped the polish from the plan. Ruth gathered the proxies and placed them beside her agenda. "This meeting is adjourned pending verification of the resignation and notice," she said. "You can't adjourn it unilaterally," Cal said. "I can when our notice listed the wrong time for an owner whose vote is being cast through a falsified proxy." "Falsified is a loaded word," Vivian said. "It has someone's signature on an authorization she didn't grant." "I'm comfortable with the load." Ruth's silver bun had loosened in the humidity. She pushed the pencil through it again. "The amendment will be placed on a new agenda after management gives proper notice. Original proxies only. Lena's resignation is not accepted." "I have a closing deadline," Vivian said. "You have a purchase contract," Ruth replied. "We have bylaws." Vivian turned to me. "Are you satisfied?" The old reflex rose in me, the need to explain that I hadn't caused this, that I hadn't wanted her to lose anything, that all she had needed to do was ask and accept the answer. I took my seat. "Not yet," I said. "I move that the minutes identify the submitted proxy as invalid and preserve both versions with the meeting records." Ruth nodded. "Seconded." Cal muttered something under his breath but raised no objection. It was a small motion, paperwork about paperwork. Still, when Ruth recorded it, my breathing steadied. Graham stood behind me for another moment. Then he left the common room. Vivian followed without collecting the cream raincoat she had draped over her chair. I carried it upstairs because leaving it there would have made it Paul's problem. Graham was packing a suitcase in our bedroom. He'd opened drawers at random. Socks lay on top of dress shirts. One of his shoes was in the suitcase and the other was under the bed. I placed Vivian's coat over the desk chair. She left this. She'll get it later. He shoved a folded sweater into the corner of the case. Where are you going? My mother's. Okay. He stopped. That's it? What do you want me to say? That you understand why I did it. I understand exactly why. You put me in an impossible position. I put you in a position where I said no to your mother. She had thousands of dollars at risk. She chose that risk because I told her this would work. There it was, not an apology, a confession of pressure. He sat on the edge of the bed. I thought you'd come around, he said. You usually do after you've had time. I leaned against the dresser because my knees felt unreliable. All those times I came around, did you think that meant I'd been wrong? No. Then what? That you realized some things weren't worth a fight. He looked exhausted. I probably did too. The key, I said. The storage locker. The guest list. My board position. My signature. Which one was supposed to be worth a fight? He stared at the open suitcase. I love you, he said. I know. That made him look up. I had expected the words to feel like mercy. They felt like the saddest fact in the room. You love me, I said, but when my answer gets in the way, you treat it like a delay. That's not fair. It's what happened. You're acting like Mom and I plotted to steal your condo. I'm not talking about my condo. You always are. No, I'm talking about what marrying you would protect. He stood and came toward me. I stepped back. His face folded, and for a second he looked like the man who had stayed up until midnight beneath my kitchen sink, swearing at a faucet because he wanted to fix something for me. Tell me how to fix this, he said. Did you send the resignation email? He closed his eyes. Yes. Did you attach my copied signature to the new Proxy? Yes. Then you knew I hadn't consented. I knew you weren't being rational. The room became very clear. He heard himself. His mouth opened again, but there was nothing he could add that would return the sentence to him. I walked into the office, took my notebook from the desk, and wrote a date 30 days away on a clean page. You can stay through this date while you arrange somewhere else, I said. We'll put it in writing. The household account is no longer available to you. I'm canceling the wedding tomorrow. He stared at the date. You had that ready. I had the numbers ready. Cold, he said softly. No. Careful. He left that night anyway. The next morning, I canceled the venue, florist and caterer. I recovered enough of the deposits to make the losses painful rather than devastating. The venue kept its booking fee. The bakery kept half. 14 upside-down wedding invitations remained on my counter until I put them through the shredder a handful at a time. Vivian emailed me an invoice for the additional expenses she claimed she had incurred because the amendment was represented as likely to pass. It included the brass light fixture, storage delivery, and the inspection on 3B. I replied that I had never made that representation and copied Graham. He didn't answer. 2 days later, Vivian withdrew her board complaint. Her note to Ruth described the proxy as an unfortunate misunderstanding created by informal family communication. Ruth forwarded it to me with one sentence. Informal communication does not explain the copied page. The lender would not approve Graham's rental income assumptions while the building prohibited the intended use. Vivian could proceed only by bringing in more money and using 3B as a residence. She requested an extension. The seller refused. Her purchase contract ended under the financing contingency. She recovered her deposit, but not the inspection, application, or delivery costs. The light fixture remained final sale. Graham lost the management arrangement he had counted on. He also had to rent a furnished studio while looking for something permanent, which cost considerably more than the $700 he had resented hearing aloud. None of it ruined them. It simply made their decisions belong to them. The board reconvened 12 days after the storm. I arrived early with the insurance estimate, the access report, and a written disclosure of my personal conflict. Ruth read the disclosure into the minutes, then asked whether any director believed I should be barred from participating. Cal adjusted his glasses. The conflict cuts both ways now. What does that mean? Audrey asked from the owner's row. It means Vivian's purchase is dead, so Lena has less personal reason to oppose the amendment. I had the same insurance estimate when the purchase was alive, I said. Cal opened his folder this time. Ruth accepted 3 original proxies and rejected 1 that lacked a date. Management confirmed the meeting notice had gone to every owner at the same time. When discussion opened, I presented the figures and answered questions. I didn't mention Graham, the wedding, or Vivian's boxes. Audrey described the unauthorized rental showing she had witnessed. Paul explained the burden that frequent short-term arrivals would place on the front desk. 2 owners who had originally supported the amendment said they wanted a narrower proposal with minimum lease terms. The unrestricted amendment failed 4 votes to 2. Cal voted for it. I respected him slightly more for doing so openly. Afterward, Ruth asked the directors to remain. We need a proxy verification policy, she said, and a rule for electronic resignations. I drafted both, I said, sliding copies across the table. Ruth's mouth moved at one corner. Of course you did. The policy required complete original forms or verified electronic signatures delivered directly by the owner. Resignations required confirmation at a meeting or through a second authenticated contact. It was boring. Specific work. I loved every minute of it. Before we adjourned, Ruth looked at me over her glasses. Will you finish your term? I glanced at my chair, the same one Graham had held while announcing that I was gone. Yes, I said. I will. Graham collected the rest of his belongings 2 weeks later. We moved around each other carefully. He took the unopened batteries from the junk drawer and left the dish towels he had used around Vivian's boxes folded beside the sink. At the door, he held his brass key between 2 fingers. I could have made a copy, he said. I know. I didn't. I know that too. He dropped it into the blue ceramic dish. The familiar note moved through the quiet condo. For 1 second, both of us looked toward the sound as if it belonged to a life we might still enter. Then he picked up his suitcase and left. I waited until the elevator carried him away. I removed his key, set it aside for the locksmith, and placed mine in the center of the chipped blue bowl.